She thought running would save her. 6 months of hiding, 6 months of silence, 6 months pretending the past didn't exist. But on a freezing November night in New York, Elena Hayes stood face to face with the one man she'd sworn never to see again. And he was staring at her rounded belly like she'd just pulled a trigger. Adrian Russo, her ex-husband, the most dangerous man she'd ever known. And in that rain-soaked moment, everything she'd sacrificed to escape him shattered. Because he knew. And men like Adrian Russo don't let go of what belongs to them. If you're hooked, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. But the rain came down in sheets, turning the Manhattan streets into rivers of neon and shadow. Elena Hayes stood at the crosswalk on Fifth Avenue, her thin coat doing nothing against the November cold that cut straight through to her bones. Her hand instinctively moved to her swollen belly. 7 months now, though she'd stopped counting weeks ago. Counting made it real. Counting made her think about what came next. She couldn't afford to think about what came next. The light changed. She stepped off the curb, her worn sneakers splashing through a puddle that soaked through to her socks. Across the street, the bodega's yellow sign promised warmth, maybe a cup of terrible coffee that would last her until morning. $3.40 in her pocket. Enough for coffee and a banana. She'd make it work. She always made it work. That's when the headlights cut through the rain. Not the normal flow of traffic. This was different. A convoy. 3 black SUVs moving in formation, the kind of precision that made pedestrians step back without thinking. Elena knew that formation. She'd lived with it for 2 years, sat in the middle car with her hands folded in her lap and her mouth shut because that's what Adrian's wife did. Ex-wife, she reminded herself. 6 months divorced, 6 months free. The vehicles stopped in the middle of Fifth Avenue, blocking both lanes. Horns blared. Someone shouted out a window. Elena's feet had frozen to the wet pavement, every instinct screaming at her to run, but her body wouldn't cooperate. She watched the middle door open with the slow, deliberate movement of someone who never rushed because they never had to. Adrian Russo stepped out into the rain. He didn't notice her at first. His attention was on the building to his left, some restaurant with floor-to-ceiling windows where Manhattan's elite pretended to eat while really making deals. He wore the same charcoal suit she remembered, the same way of standing that took up more space than his actual body. Like gravity bent different around him. Then he turned his head. Their eyes met across 20 feet of rain-soaked asphalt, and Elena watched his entire face change. Not dramatic, Adrian never did dramatic, but she'd learned to read him in those 2 years of marriage, learned that the smallest shift in his expression meant earthquakes were coming. His gaze dropped to her belly. Time didn't stop. That was romance novel bullshit, but everything slowed down enough for Elena to see the exact moment understanding hit him. His jaw tightened, his hand, which had been reaching for his phone, fell still, and his eyes, those dark eyes that had looked at her with everything from desire to contempt to cold indifference, went absolutely empty. That's when Elena ran. She spun on her heel and bolted back the way she came, her hand pressed to her stomach like she could protect what was inside from what was behind. The pregnancy made her clumsy, her center of gravity all wrong, but fear gave her speed. She heard shouting, Adrian's voice, sharp and commanding, but she didn't look back. The subway entrance loomed ahead, that blessed stairwell leading down into the earth. She hit the steps hard, grabbing the railing to keep from falling, her breath coming in gasps that tasted like rain and panic. Down, down, down into the fluorescent hell of the F train platform. It was packed, Friday night in Manhattan, everyone heading somewhere better than where they were. Elena pushed through the crowd, not apologizing, not caring about the irritated looks. She needed to disappear into the mass of humanity, needed to become invisible again. The platform stretched ahead of her, and she made for the far end where it curved and the crowd thinned. Her lungs burned, her legs felt like they might give out. But she kept moving because stopping meant being found, and being found meant, Elena. The voice came from behind her, close enough that she could hear it over the ambient roar of the subway. Not shouted, almost calm. That made it worse. She didn't stop, couldn't stop. The platform ended in a maintenance area, a metal gate with a no-entry sign that nobody paid attention to. She squeezed through the gap, her belly barely fitting, and found herself in a dimmer corridor that smelled like brake dust and old piss. Footsteps behind her, steady, unhurried. "There's nowhere to go," Adrian said, and he was right, but she kept going anyway because that's what prey did when the predator got too close. The corridor opened into a wider space, some kind of junction between platforms. More people here, transit workers in orange vests, a couple of kids doing something with a spray paint can. Elena's vision started spotting at the edges. She leaned against the grimy tile wall, trying to catch her breath, trying to think of what came next. The workers ignored her. Everyone in New York learned to ignore pregnant women having breakdowns against subway walls. "You need to stop running." Adrian's voice came from her left now, and when she jerked her head up, there he was. No security detail. No bodyguards, just him, standing 10 feet away with his hands in his pockets like they'd run into each other at Whole Foods. "Fuck you," Lena managed between gasps. Eloquent as ever. He took a step closer. "When were you going to tell me?" "Never." The word came out fierce, despite her lungs feeling like they might collapse. "I was never going to tell you." Something flickered across his face. Hurt, maybe, though that seemed impossible. Adrian Russo didn't get hurt. He got even. "How far along?" "None of your business." "It became my business the moment you conceived." Another step. "What do you need? Money? Housing? Medical care?" "I need you to leave me alone." Elena pushed off the wall, forcing herself to stand straight even though her back screamed in protest. "That's what I needed 6 months ago. That's what I need now. You're living in a 5th-floor walk-up in Washington Heights, with no heat and mold in the bathroom." Adrian's voice stayed level, but there was something underneath it now. "I know where you work. That coffee shop on 184th that pays you under the table because you won't use your real name. I know you're eating 1 meal a day. I know—" "Stop," Elena's voice cracked. "Stop acting like you care." "I'm not acting. You never cared." The shout tore out of her, echoing off the tile walls. A transit worker glanced over, then quickly away. "You cared about owning me, about controlling me, about having the perfect wife who looked right and said the right things and never ever embarrassed you in front of your business associates. But you never cared about me." Adrian's jaw worked. "Is that what you think?" "It's what I know." For a long moment, they just stared at each other, the rumble of an approaching train filling the space between them. Elena could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, the same way she'd seen it 100 times before when he was deciding how to handle an obstacle. "Come with me," he finally said. "We'll talk somewhere that doesn't smell like piss." "I'm not going anywhere with you. You're 7 months pregnant and just ran half a mile in the rain." His voice softened, and that was worse than the calculation, worse than the control, because soft Adrian was the one who'd convinced her to marry him in the first place. "You're shaking. You can barely stand, and you're terrified I'm going to take something from you." "Aren't you?" The train pulled in behind them, its brakes shrieking. People started moving toward the platform, flowing around them like water around stones. "No," Adrian said. "I'm trying to protect you." Elena laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Like you protected me when you had your men follow me to the grocery store? When you monitored my phone calls? When you told me I couldn't have friends because people talk? That was different. It was exactly the same." She was shouting again, but she didn't care. "You want to protect me from everyone except yourself. Well, I already escaped you once. I'll do it again." She turned to push back through the crowd toward the platform, but her foot caught on something. A crack in the floor, a piece of trash, her own clumsiness. She felt herself falling, the world tilting sideways, and in that split second all she could think was the baby. The baby. Protect the baby. Adrian caught her. His arms locked around her before she hit the ground, pulling her against his chest with a strength that she'd forgotten he had. For just a moment, less than a heartbeat, she let herself lean into it. Let herself remember what it felt like when he held her like something precious instead of possessed. Then reality snapped back and she shoved away from him. "Don't touch me." "You almost fell." "I don't care." But her hands were shaking worse now, and they both knew it wasn't just from the cold. Adrian stood there, his hands held up in a gesture of surrender that looked wrong on him. 20 minutes, he said. "Give me 20 minutes. If you still want to leave after that, I'll have my driver take you home. No conditions, no strings." "I don't believe you." "I know." He pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed her the screen. It was a text to someone named Marcus. If Ms. Hayes wants to leave in 20 minutes, take her wherever she wants to go. No surveillance, no follow-up. Those are orders. Elena stared at the screen, trying to find the trap. There was always a trap with Adrian. Why? She asked. Because you're carrying my child. His eyes dropped to her belly again, and this time she saw something she'd never seen before. Fear. Actual, genuine fear. And because whoever's trying to kill me now knows about it. The bottom dropped out of Elena's stomach. What? 20 minutes, Adrian repeated. Then you can run again if you want, but at least you'll know what you're running from. The car was exactly as she remembered. Black leather, tinted windows. That new car smell that Adrian replaced every 6 months because he couldn't stand the idea of anything he owned showing wear. Elena sat as far from him as the back seat allowed, her arms wrapped around her belly like a shield. They drove in silence through Manhattan, the rain turning the city into a watercolor painting outside the windows. Elena watched the buildings slide past and tried to organize her thoughts into something other than pure panic. Where are we going? She finally asked. Somewhere we can talk privately. That's not an answer. The townhouse on 67th. Adrian was looking at his phone, scrolling through messages with the kind of focus that meant he was deliberately not looking at her. It's secure. I'm not going to your house. It's not my house anymore. He glanced up. I moved after you left. This one's new. You've never been there. Like that made it better. Like new walls would somehow erase the history between them. The car pulled up in front of a beautiful brownstone tucked between two larger buildings. The kind of place that cost more than most people made in a lifetime, but looked modest by New York standards. Adrian got out first, said something to the driver, then opened Elena's door. She didn't take his offered hand. She climbed out on her own, her legs still shaky, and followed him up the stone steps. The inside was sparse, not empty, but not lived in either. Furniture that looked expensive but generic, like it came from a staging company. No photos, no personal items, nothing that said someone actually inhabited this space. You really moved, Elena said, surprised despite herself. I told you I did. Adrian shrugged off his wet jacket and hung it on a hook by the door. Can I get you something? Tea? Water? Information. She stayed by the door, ready to run if she needed to. You said someone's trying to kill you. Someone's always trying to kill me. Adrian walked into what looked like a living room, pressing buttons on a panel that made lights come on and shades descend over the windows. That's the nature of my business, but 3 days ago someone made an attempt that got closer than it should have. Elena's heart was hammering. And the intel we gathered suggests they know about you. He turned to face her, and in the soft lighting she could see lines of exhaustion she'd missed before. A pregnant ex-wife is leverage. It's the kind of thing my enemies would use. So this is about protecting your reputation. The words came out flat. Making sure nobody uses me against you. This is about keeping you alive. Adrian's voice hardened. You think I give a shit what people say? They've been talking about me since I was 16, but you're vulnerable. And whether you like it or not, that child connects us, which makes you a target. Elena's hand moved to her belly automatically. I've been fine for 6 months. You've been lucky for 6 months. He crossed to a sidebar, poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, and downed it in one swallow. Luck runs out. So what do you want from me? Elena hated how small her voice sounded. Protection money? A cut of your empire? What's the price for you to keep your enemies away from me? Adrian set the glass down hard enough that she heard it crack. I don't want anything from you, Elena. I want to give you something. I don't want safety. The word cut through her protest. Actual, guaranteed safety. And before you tell me you don't need it, before you throw another speech at me about independence and freedom, just listen. He pulled out his phone again, swiped through several screens, and turned it toward her. Elena stepped closer despite herself, squinting at what looked like medical records. What am I looking at? Your OB/GYN appointments. Adrian's voice was quiet now. Or lack thereof. You went to a clinic in Queens twice in your first trimester. Nothing since then. Elena's face burned. I couldn't afford... I know. He put the phone down. I know you're working 40 hours a week on your feet. I know you're taking the subway everywhere because you can't afford cabs. I know your apartment is a death trap that should have been condemned years ago. And I know, his voice caught, I know you're doing all of this because you'd rather risk everything than come back to me. The honesty of it hit Elena like a physical blow. She'd expected anger, expected demands, expected the cold control that Adrian wrapped around himself like armor. She hadn't expected this raw admission that he knew exactly how much she hated him. You made your choice, she said quietly. I'm making mine. Then make it an informed choice. Adrian pulled out his phone again, made a call. Marcus, send Dr. Reeves up. He hung up before Elena could protest. What are you doing? Giving you information. He gestured to a chair. Sit. Please. I don't... Elena. Her name came out rough. Just sit. If you want to run after this, I won't stop you. But at least let me give you the tools to run safely. She should leave. Should walk right out that door and disappear into the New York night and never look back. But her feet hurt. Her back hurt. And underneath all the fear and anger was a thread of something she didn't want to acknowledge. Curiosity about what he meant by tools. She sat. 5 minutes later, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a medical bag arrived. Dr. Reeves, apparently, Adrian's private physician, which was a thing only obscenely wealthy people had. Ms. Hayes, the doctor said warmly, I'm just going to do a basic checkup if that's all right with you. Non-invasive, just vitals and a quick ultrasound to make sure everything's progressing normally. Elena wanted to refuse, wanted to tell them both to go to hell. But when was the last time someone had checked on the baby? When was the last time she'd known for certain that everything was okay? Fine, she heard herself say. The examination was quick and professional. Blood pressure, temperature, heart rate. Dr. Reeves's hands were gentle as she pressed against Elena's belly, feeling the baby's position. How far along did you say you were? The doctor asked. 28 weeks. Doctor. Reeves pulled out a portable ultrasound machine from her bag. May I? Elena nodded, lying back against the couch cushions. The cold gel made her flinch, and then the wand was pressing against her skin, and the room filled with the rapid-fire sound of a heartbeat. No, 2 heartbeats. What? Elena started. Dr. Reeves's expression shifted. Mr. Russo, could you come here, please? Adrian was across the room in 3 strides, staring at the small screen like it held nuclear launch codes. Ms. Hayes, Dr. Reeves said carefully. When was your last ultrasound? At the clinic? Week 12, maybe? And they told you it was a singleton pregnancy? Elena's heart stopped. Yes? Why? Dr. Reeves turned the screen toward her, pointing at 2 distinct shapes curled together in the grainy image. Because you're carrying twins. The world tilted sideways. Twins. 2 babies. 2 lives depending on her in an apartment with no heat and mold in the bathroom. That's not possible, Elena whispered. It's uncommon to miss on an early ultrasound, but it happens, Dr. Reeves said, especially at clinics with older equipment. They can hide behind each other in the early stages. Adrian hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. Elena tore her eyes from the screen to look at him, and what she saw there made her chest tight. He was crying. Not sobbing. Adrian Russo didn't sob, but there were tears running down his face, and his hand was pressed against his mouth like he didn't trust what might come out. Twins, he said, and his voice broke on the word. Dr. Reeves, sensing the moment, quietly began packing up her equipment. I'm going to recommend immediate prenatal care, she said to Elena. Twin pregnancies are higher risk, especially this far along with no monitoring. You're going to need... Whatever she needs, Adrian interrupted. Whatever it costs. I don't care. Adrian, Elena started. No. He wiped his face roughly, pulling himself back together with visible effort. You can hate me. You can leave. But you're not going to risk our children's lives because you can't afford a doctor. They're not our children, Elena said, but the words felt hollow even as she said them. They're mine. They're ours. Adrian crouched down beside the couch, his eyes level with hers. And I know you don't believe me. I know you think this is about control or possession or whatever else I did to make you run. But Elena, I'm begging you, stay. Just for tonight, let Dr. Reeves run proper tests. Let me make sure you and the babies are healthy. Then if you want to leave tomorrow, I'll set you up with the best prenatal care in the city and you'll never have to see me again." Elena looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since the street. He looked like shit, thinner than she remembered, with shadows under his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. The Adrian she'd left had been perfectly groomed, perfectly controlled, perfectly untouchable. This man looked human. "One night," she heard herself say. Relief crashed across Adrian's face. "One night." Dr. Reeves cleared her throat. "I'll need to run some blood work and a more detailed ultrasound. Mr. Russo, I'll need access to your medical suite." "Third floor." Adrian stood, offering Elena his hand. She didn't take it, pushing herself up on her own. "I'll show you." The medical suite was exactly what Elena expected from Adrian. Top-of-the-line equipment that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. All of it pristine and clearly maintained whether it got used or not. Dr. Reeves worked efficiently, drawing blood, checking measurements, asking questions about Elena's health history that made it painfully obvious how little prenatal care she'd actually received. Adrian stood against the wall the entire time, watching everything with an intensity that should have been creepy but somehow wasn't. He was memorizing, Elena realized, cataloging every detail like he could protect her and the babies through sheer force of observation. "All right," Dr. Reeves finally said, snapping off her gloves. "Preliminary results look good. You're measuring right on track for twins at 28 weeks. I'm seeing 2 strong heartbeats, good movement, placenta positioning looks normal, but..." She fixed Elena with a serious look. "You're anemic. Your blood pressure's higher than I'd like, and you're underweight for a twin pregnancy." "I'm eating," Elena said defensively. "I'm sure you are, but you need more than what you're getting." Dr. Reeves pulled out a prescription pad. "I'm writing you scripts for prenatal vitamins, iron supplements, and a high-protein diet plan. You need to be eating at least 2,800 calories a day." Elena laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "On what budget?" "On mine," Adrian said quietly. "Mr. Russo," Dr. Reeves started. "Can you give us a moment?" Adrian's voice was polite but firm, the kind of voice that expected compliance. Dr. Reeves nodded, gathering her things. "I'll be downstairs. Call if you need anything." When she was gone, Elena pushed herself up from the examination table. "I'm not taking your money." "You're taking my money or you're staying here." Adrian's voice was flat. "Those are the options. You can't just..." "I can." He crossed his arms. "Elena, I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to keep you alive. Do you understand the difference?" "No," Elena shot back, "because with you, there never was a difference." That hit home. She saw him flinch, saw the words land like physical blows. "You're right," he said after a long moment. "When we were married, I didn't know the difference. I thought protecting you meant controlling every variable, making every decision, keeping you in a box where nothing could hurt you, not even yourself. And now? Now I'm learning." Adrian ran a hand through his hair, messing it up in a way he never would have allowed before. "Badly. Probably too late. But I'm learning that you don't protect someone by taking away their choices." Elena wanted to believe him. That was the worst part, standing there in his medical suite, carrying his children. She wanted so badly to believe he'd changed. "One night," she said again. "That's all I'm giving you." "One night," Adrian agreed. "And in the morning, I'll give you options. Real ones, not ultimatums." He led her out of the medical suite, down a hallway lined with closed doors. The townhouse was bigger than it looked from outside. 4 stories, at least a dozen rooms. Adrian's footsteps echoed on the hardwood. "I need to make some calls," he said, stopping at the top of the stairs. "There's a guest room on this floor, second door on the left. Bathroom's attached. I'll have some clothes brought up, and food if you're hungry." "I can wear my own clothes." "Your clothes are soaked through." He said it matter-of-factly, without judgment. "I'm not trying to erase you. I'm trying to keep you from catching pneumonia." Elena looked down at herself. He was right. She was still dripping rainwater onto his expensive floors, her shirt clinging to her skin in a way that made her shiver. "Fine," she conceded, "but nothing..." "I'll have them send up basics, sweatpants and a t-shirt. Nothing that looks like I'm trying to dress you." Adrian's mouth quirked in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "I remember how much you hated when I did that." He did. She'd hated it. The endless parade of designer clothes that appeared in her closet, the subtle way he'd frown if she wore something that didn't fit his image of what Mrs. Adrian Russo should look like. "Thank you," Elena said, and meant it. Adrian nodded, already pulling out his phone as he headed down the stairs. Elena watched him go, then turned toward the guest room. It was beautiful in that impersonal way. Expensive hotel rooms were beautiful, tasteful furniture, neutral colors, everything coordinated, but nothing that suggested an actual person had ever stayed there. Elena sat on the edge of the bed and let herself breathe for the first time in what felt like hours. Twins. She pressed both hands against her belly, trying to feel them, trying to understand how she'd been carrying two lives and never known it. The apartment in Washington Heights couldn't handle one baby, let alone two. She'd been planning to give birth at the city hospital and pray nothing went wrong. Now everything was different. A knock on the door made her jump. "Come in," she called, expecting a housekeeper. Adrian stood in the doorway, holding a stack of clothes and looking uncertain in a way that was so foreign to him it was almost funny. "The staff's gone for the night," he said. "It's just us." Just us. The words hung in the air, loaded with 2 years of history and 6 months of silence. "I can manage," Elena said, reaching for the clothes. Adrian handed them over, his fingers brushing hers for just a second. "There's food in the kitchen when you're ready. Nothing fancy, just food." He was trying. She could see him trying, could see the effort it took for him to stand there and offer without demanding, to give without taking. "Adrian," she said as he turned to leave. "Yeah? Why didn't you look for me?" The question had been burning in her chest for 6 months. "When I left, you have the resources to find anyone, but you just let me go." Adrian's hand tightened on the doorframe. "Because you asked me to." "Since when do you care what I ask for?" "Since you left." He looked back at her, and the exhaustion in his eyes was complete. "You want to know the truth? I spent the first month looking for you. Had teams searching every database, every security camera, every credit card transaction. Found you in 3 days." Elena's breath caught. "You knew where I was?" "I knew you were alive and unhurt. That's all I let myself know." Adrian's voice was quiet. "Because you were right, Elena, about all of it. I did control you. I did own you instead of loving you. And when you left, I had to decide if I was going to keep doing that or if I was going to let you have what you asked for. So you just let me go?" "I let you be free." He smiled, sad and tired. "Even if it killed me." He left before she could respond, pulling the door closed behind him. Elena sat on the bed, holding the clothes he'd brought, and for the first time in 6 months, she let herself cry. Not for what was lost, but for what might still be possible. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, she forgot where she was. Then the events of last night crashed back and she sat up too fast, her head spinning. Twins, Adrian, the townhouse. She'd fallen asleep in the clothes he'd brought her, too exhausted to do anything but collapse onto the bed. Now her mouth tasted like copper, and her bladder was screaming for attention. She shuffled to the attached bathroom, caught sight of herself in the mirror, and winced. Her hair looked like something small had nested in it. Dark circles under her eyes. Face puffy from crying. She looked like exactly what she was. A woman who'd been running for 6 months and finally got caught. The bathroom had everything she might need, all still in packaging like Adrian had gone out and bought it specifically for her. Toothbrush, toothpaste, face wash. She used it all, trying to scrub away the feeling of being trapped, even though Adrian had technically kept his word. One night. He'd promised one night, and morning was here. She could leave. Should leave. Elena pressed her hand against her belly, feeling the gentle pressure of movement inside. 2 of them in there. 2 tiny humans who needed more than she could give them alone. Downstairs, she found Adrian in what looked like a dining room, surrounded by paperwork and a laptop, a cup of coffee cooling at his elbow. He'd changed into fresh clothes, dark jeans and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. It made him look younger somehow. Less like the man who'd controlled her life and more like the guy she'd met at a charity gala 4 years ago. The one who'd made her laugh and asked about her degree in art history, like it actually mattered. He looked up when she entered and something in his expression softened. "You slept," he said. Didn't have much choice. Elena hovered in the doorway, unsure if she was supposed to sit or stand or run. What time is it? Almost 9. Adrian closed his laptop. There's coffee, decaf, and I had breakfast brought in. I didn't know what you'd want, so there's options. Options. The word came out flat. Like you promised. Yeah. Adrian stood, gesturing to the sideboard where covered dishes waited. Like I promised. Elena moved to the food, lifting lids. Scrambled eggs, toast, fruit, yogurt, bacon. Enough to feed 6 people, let alone 1 pregnant woman. This is too much, she said. You need to eat. Adrian poured her coffee from a carafe, added cream without asking, because he remembered how she took it, apparently. Dr. Reeves's orders. Elena took the cup but didn't drink. We need to talk about what happens next. We do. Adrian sat back down but didn't reach for his papers. But eat first, please. You didn't have dinner last night. She had been hungry enough to consider gnawing her own arm off, so Elena filled a plate and sat at the opposite end of the table. The eggs were perfect, not too dry, seasoned just right. She tried not to shovel them into her mouth like a starving animal, but it was close. Adrian watched her eat with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not possessive, at least not the way it used to be. Something else, something that looked almost like relief. Stop staring, Elena said around a mouthful of toast. Sorry, but he didn't look away. You're here. You're real. For 6 months I wasn't sure if I'd ever see you again. You could have looked. I told you why I didn't. Yeah. Elena set down her fork. You said you let me be free, but that's not the same as not knowing where I was. You said you found me in 3 days. Adrian's jaw tightened. I needed to know you were alive. That's all. And then what? You just forgot about me? I couldn't forget about you if I tried. The words came out rough, like they'd been scraped from somewhere deep. Every day I wanted to show up at that coffee shop. Every night I wanted to call. But you left because being with me was worse than being alone, and I had to live with that. Elena picked up her coffee, more for something to do with her hands than because she wanted it. And now? Now you're carrying my children and someone wants to use that against me. Adrian pulled one of the papers toward him. Which brings us to the conversation we need to have. Here it was, the trap she'd been waiting for. I'm listening, Elena said. Adrian slid the paper across the table. It was a printout of what looked like surveillance photos. Grainy images of a man she didn't recognize meeting with other men she didn't recognize in what looked like a parking garage. This is Dmitry Volkov, Adrian said, tapping the first man's face. He's been trying to move into my territory for the last year. Drugs, weapons, the usual. I've been blocking him at every turn. Okay? 3 days ago, his people made a move on one of my warehouses. We stopped them, but during the raid we found something. Adrian pulled out another photo, this time of a whiteboard covered in Russian writing and what looked like a map. They're planning something bigger, and your name was on that board. Elena's blood went cold. My name, along with your address, your work schedule, and a notation that said, confirm pregnancy. Adrian's voice stayed level, but his hands were clenched into fists on the table. They've been watching you, Elena, for at least 2 weeks. The eggs in her stomach turned to lead. How would they even know about me? We've been divorced for 6 months. Because divorce doesn't erase history. You were my wife for 2 years. That makes you a liability. Adrian stood, started pacing. The smart play would be to kidnap you, use you as leverage to make me back off. But if they know you're pregnant, they'd have even more leverage. Elena finished the thought, her hand moving automatically to her belly. Exactly. So what do you want me to do? Elena heard the tremor in her own voice and hated it. Go into hiding? Leave New York? Change my name? I want you to stay here. Adrian stopped pacing, turned to face her. Where I can protect you. No. Elena, I said no. She stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. I'm not going back to being locked in a cage, even if you call it protection. It's not a cage if you can leave whenever you want. Can I? Elena challenged. Can I really? Or would there be men following me everywhere I went, cameras watching my every move, you deciding who I can see and where I can go and what I can do? Adrian flinched. I'm not that man anymore. Prove it. How? The question came out desperate. How do I prove it when the threat is real and you won't let me keep you safe? Elena grabbed the surveillance photos, stared at her own face captured through a telephoto lens. She was leaving the coffee shop, her hand on her belly, completely unaware she was being watched. The violation of it made her sick. I don't know, she admitted, but locking me up isn't the answer. Then what is? Before Elena could respond, Adrian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and whatever he saw there made his entire body go rigid. I need to take this. He answered without waiting for her response. Talk to me. Elena couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she watched Adrian's face go from tense to furious to something that looked like fear. When? He demanded. How many? A pause. No, keep them there. I'm coming now. He hung up, was already moving toward the door. I have to go. What happened? Adrian stopped, seemed to wrestle with himself for a moment. Volkov made another move, hit one of my clubs downtown. There were people inside. Are they okay? I don't know yet. He grabbed a jacket from the coat rack. Stay here. Don't answer the door for anyone except Dr. Reeves. And Elena. He turned back, his eyes hard. I mean it. Don't leave this house. You can't just... But he was already gone, the front door slamming behind him. Elena stood alone in the dining room, fury and fear warring in her chest. This was exactly what she'd run from. Adrian making decisions without her input, giving orders and expecting compliance. Stay here. Don't leave. Like she was a child or a possession instead of a grown woman capable of making her own choices. She could leave right now. Walk out that door and disappear again, find a new place to hide where neither Adrian nor his enemies could find her. But the surveillance photos were still on the table. Her face, captured without her knowledge. 2 weeks they'd been watching her. 2 weeks she'd been in danger and never known it. Elena sank back into her chair, her hands shaking. She thought about the twins growing inside her, about the apartment with no heat and mold in the bathroom, about the prenatal care she couldn't afford, and the future she couldn't secure alone. She thought about Adrian's face when he'd seen the ultrasound, the tears he'd tried to hide. The phone on the table buzzed, Adrian's work phone that he'd left behind in his rush. Elena shouldn't look, shouldn't invade his privacy. But her hand reached for it anyway, swiping the screen to life. 3 missed calls from someone named Marcus, 2 text messages from a contact labeled only J. She opened the messages. Volkov's making his play. Time to end this. If you want the intel on his operation, meet me at the usual place. 1 hour. Elena stared at the messages, her mind racing. Adrian had enemies. She'd always known that, even when they were married. But this was war. And she was stuck in the middle of it, whether she wanted to be or not. The front door opened, making her jump. But it wasn't Adrian. It was Dr. Reeves, carrying a medical bag and looking concerned. Ms. Hayes, the doctor said, Mr. Russo called, asked me to come check on you and the babies. Of course he did. Elena set the phone down. I'm fine. Humor me anyway. Dr. Reeves set her bag on the table. How are you feeling this morning? Any cramping, bleeding, unusual discharge? No, just... Elena gestured vaguely at everything. Overwhelmed. Understandable. The doctor pulled out her portable ultrasound. Mind if I take another look? I want to get some clear images now that we know it's twins. Elena nodded, too tired to fight. She lay back on the dining room chair while Dr. Reeves set up the equipment, the familiar cold gel making her flinch. The heartbeats filled the room again, that rapid double-time rhythm that sounded like horses galloping. Dr. Reeves moved the wand carefully, studying the screen with a practiced eye. There's baby A, she said, pointing to the screen, and baby B, both measuring well. Good movement. Placenta looks healthy. What are they? Elena heard herself ask. I mean, can you tell the sex? Dr. Reeves smiled. Do you want to know? Did she? Elena had been avoiding this question for months, not wanting to make the pregnancy more real than it already was. But now, Lying here with two heartbeats filling her ears and Adrian's enemy watching her from the shadows? Yeah, she wanted to know. Yes, she said. Dr. Reeves adjusted the image, zooming in on first one baby, then the other. Well, she said slowly, it looks like you're having two girls. Girls, daughters. Elena felt something crack open in her chest, some wall she'd been holding onto for dear life. Two little girls who would depend on her for everything, who would need more than she could give them alone. Are you all right? Dr. Reeves asked gently. I don't know, Elena admitted. I don't know anything anymore. The doctor cleaned off the gel, packed up her equipment. For what it's worth, she said carefully, I've been Adrian's physician for 5 years. I've seen him in every possible state, injured, furious, desperate, and I've never seen him the way he was last night. What do you mean? Terrified. Dr. Reeves met her eyes. That man is terrified of losing you. Whatever happened between you two, whatever you're running from, he's not the same person he was. People don't change, Elena said. Maybe not fundamentally, but they can learn. The doctor gathered her bag. I'm leaving you my direct number. Call me any time, day or night, if you need anything. And please, take care of yourself. Those girls need their mother healthy. After she left, Elena sat in the silence of the townhouse, trying to organize her thoughts into something coherent. She was carrying twin girls. Adrian's enemies knew about her, and Adrian himself was out there right now, dealing with some crisis that could get him killed. She should leave, should run while she had the chance. Instead, she found herself walking through the townhouse, exploring the space Adrian had built for himself after she'd left. The first floor was impersonal. Living room, dining room, kitchen, all beautifully furnished but empty of life. The second floor had the guest room where she'd slept, plus what looked like an office and a library. The third floor was where things got interesting. The medical suite she'd seen last night, a gym with equipment that looked barely used, and at the end of the hall, a closed door. Elena knew she shouldn't open it, knew she was crossing a line. She opened it anyway. The room was a nursery. Not finished, the walls were only half painted in a soft yellow, drop cloths still covering the floor. But there were 2 cribs, still in boxes, a changing table, shelves waiting to be filled with books and toys. Elena stood in the doorway, her heart hammering. When had he done this? How long had he been preparing for something he couldn't have known would happen? I started it a week ago. She spun around. Adrian stood at the top of the stairs, looking exhausted and furious, and somehow smaller than he had that morning. You left your phone, Elena said stupidly. I know. Elena. He walked past her into the nursery, looking around at the half-finished space. I came back for it. Didn't expect you'd be up here. You were building a nursery. Elena couldn't wrap her mind around it. Before you knew. Before last night. I was building hope. Adrian's voice was quiet. The intelligence about Volkov came in a week ago. Your name on that board, and I thought, if you were in danger, you'd need somewhere safe to go. And if you were pregnant like the report suggested, you'd need somewhere for the baby. You didn't know there were 2. No. A ghost of a smile. That was a surprise. Elena walked into the room, running her hand along one of the unassembled cribs. Why yellow? Because I didn't know if it would be a boy or a girl. Adrian leaned against the doorframe. Do you? No, I mean. Dr. Reeves told me. Elena turned to face him. They're girls, both of them. Adrian's face did something complicated. Girls. Yeah. I have daughters. He said it like he was testing the words, seeing how they felt in his mouth. 2 daughters. You have enemies trying to kill you, Elena corrected. What happened at the club? Adrian's expression hardened. 3 dead, 7 injured. Volkov's people walked in with automatic weapons and opened fire. Elena felt sick. Why? To send a message. Adrian pushed off the doorframe, started pacing. To show me he's serious. That he can hit me anywhere, anytime. And what message are you sending back? That's the problem. Adrian stopped, faced her. The message I want to send would start a war that would burn through half of Manhattan, but I can't do that. Not with you here. Not with, he gestured helplessly at her belly. Not with them. So what are you going to do? I don't know. The admission seemed to cost him. For the first time in my life, I don't have a clear move, because every option puts you in danger. Elena wanted to tell him it wasn't his problem, that she could take care of herself, that she didn't need his protection. But the surveillance photos were still downstairs on the table, proof that she'd been in danger for weeks without even knowing it. What if I stayed? She heard herself ask. Adrian went very still. What? Not forever. Not as... She struggled for the word. Not as your prisoner, but just until this is resolved, until Volkov is dealt with and it's safe again. You'd be willing to do that? For them. Elena pressed her hand to her belly. Not for you, for them. Something in Adrian's face crumpled. Whatever the reason, I'll take it. But there are conditions. Elena's voice firmed. I'm not going back to how things were. I need freedom to move around, to make my own choices. And if at any point I feel like you're trying to control me again, I'll drive you to wherever you want to go myself, Adrian interrupted. Elena, I'm not trying to trap you. I'm trying to keep you alive. Then prove it. Elena crossed her arms. Show me that this is about protection and not possession. Adrian nodded slowly. What do you need? My things from the apartment. My books, my clothes, the few photos I have. I'm not going to stay here in borrowed clothes feeling like a guest. Done. I'll send someone today. No. Elena shook her head. I'll go get them. With you if you insist on coming along. But I need to be part of this. I need to feel like I have some control over my own life. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but he swallowed it. Okay, we'll go together. And I want to know what's happening with Volkov, with your business, all of it. No more secrets. That's dangerous. So is being ignorant. Elena met his eyes. You want me to trust you? Then trust me back. Tell me what's really going on. For a long moment, Adrian just looked at her. Then he walked to the window, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. Volkov isn't just trying to move into my territory, he said finally. He's trying to erase me, take everything I've built and burn it to the ground. He's got backing, serious money from somewhere overseas, and he's got inside information about my operations that he shouldn't have. You think you have a leak? I know I have a leak. Adrian's hands clenched into fists. Someone close to me is feeding him intel, which means I can't trust anyone right now except my most inner circle. And me? Elena asked. Where do I fit in that? Adrian turned from the window. You're the only person I trust completely, because you're the only one who has no reason to lie to me. You already left once. If you wanted to destroy me, you could have done it months ago. The honesty of it stung. So I'm useful now. You're essential now. Adrian crossed the room, stopped just close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. But more than that, you're the mother of my children, and whether you believe it or not, you're the only woman I've ever loved. Elena's breath caught. Don't. Don't what? Tell you the truth? Adrian's voice dropped. I know I didn't show it right when we were married. I know I treated you like property instead of a partner. But Elena, I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. Love isn't supposed to hurt, Elena whispered. I know. Adrian reached up, his hand hovering near her face but not quite touching. And I hurt you in ways I'm still learning to understand. But I'm asking you, begging you, to give me a chance to do it right this time, to protect without controlling, to love without owning. Elena stepped back, breaking the moment before it could pull her under. I need time. You have all the time you need. Adrian dropped his hand. But while you're taking it, please stay here. Stay safe. Let me handle Volkov. And how are you going to do that? Adrian's expression went cold. By being the man I used to be. Before you. Before I learned that some things are more important than winning. There was a threat in those words, and Elena shivered. You're going to kill him. If necessary. Adrian said it without emotion. He went after my people, my business, and now he's threatening the mother of my children. There's only one way that ends. And if you die doing it, then you'll be set up for life. The will's already changed. Everything goes to you and the girls. Adrian pulled out his phone, showed her a legal document. Liquid assets, property, legitimate businesses, all of it. You'll never have to worry about money again. Elena stared at the numbers on the screen. More zeros than she'd ever imagined. Enough to raise 2 children in comfort for the rest of their lives. I don't want your money, she said. And I don't want to die. Adrian pocketed the phone. But if I do, at least you'll be protected. Adrian, let me do this. His voice was urgent now. Let me take care of you the way I should have from the beginning. Not by controlling you, but by making sure you have everything you need. Please. Elena looked at him, really looked at him. The man she'd married had been confident to the point of arrogance, secure in his power and control. This man was different. Still dangerous, still powerful, but there was a crack in the armor now. A vulnerability that made him more human and somehow more frightening. Okay, she heard herself say. I'll stay. For now. Relief crashed across Adrian's face. Thank you. But I meant what I said about conditions. I need my things from the apartment. And I need to feel like I'm part of this, not just being hidden away like a valuable object. We'll go now. Adrian was already pulling out his phone, texting someone. I'll have security sweep the building first, then we'll get your stuff. That's not... Elena started. It's the compromise, Adrian interrupted gently. You want to go, I want you safe. So we make sure it's safe first, then we go together. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than being locked in the townhouse with no say in her own life. Fine, Elena agreed. Adrian made the call, spoke in rapid-fire instructions to whoever was on the other end. While he did, Elena walked back to the nursery doorway, looking at the half-finished room with its 2 cribs and yellow walls. 2 girls, her daughters. She was doing this for them, she reminded herself. Not for Adrian, not for herself. For the 2 little lives growing inside her who deserved better than a mother running scared and a father waging war. They're going to love this room, Adrian said quietly from behind her. If we both survive long enough to finish it, Elena replied. We will. Adrian's hand settled on her shoulder, light enough that she could pull away if she wanted to. I promise you that. Elena didn't pull away, just stood there letting herself take comfort from the touch, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. Because maybe, just maybe, running wasn't going to save her this time. Maybe the only way through was standing still and fighting back. The apartment building looked worse in daylight. Elena stood on the cracked sidewalk, staring up at the peeling paint and broken window on the 3rd floor, and felt a wave of shame wash over her. This was where she'd been living, where she'd planned to bring a baby, 2 babies, into the world. You lived here for 6 months, Adrian said beside her, his voice carefully neutral. Yeah. Elena didn't look at him. It was cheap. It's a death trap. It kept me alive. She started toward the entrance, but Adrian's hand caught her arm. Wait! He nodded toward a black sedan parked across the street. Marcus needs to clear it first. Elena watched as a man in a dark suit, Marcus apparently, got out of the car and entered the building. 2 more men followed him, moving with the kind of precision that said military training. Is this really necessary? Elena asked. After what happened at the club? Yes. Adrian's jaw was tight. Volkov knows where you live. We have to assume he's watching. They waited in tense silence. Elena counted the windows on her building, tried to remember which ones belonged to her neighbors. Mrs. Chen on the 2nd floor who always smelled like ginger. The college kids on the 4th floor who played music too loud. People she'd barely spoken to in 6 months of living there because talking meant questions, and questions meant lies. Marcus emerged from the building, gave Adrian a subtle nod. Clear. But there's been someone here. Elena's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Door to your apartment's been forced. Marcus looked at her with something that might have been sympathy. Recently, maybe in the last few hours. Adrian's hand tightened on her arm. Did they take anything? Hard to say without Ms. Hayes identifying what's missing. Marcus gestured toward the entrance. But whoever it was, they were looking for something. Elena pulled away from Adrian and headed for the building, her heart hammering. Behind her, she heard Adrian issue sharp orders to his men, but she didn't stop. She climbed the 5 flights of stairs, no elevator, never had been, and pushed through the door to the hallway. Her apartment door hung open, the lock shattered. Inside was chaos. Her mattress had been flipped, the thin foam sliced open. Her small dresser had been pulled away from the wall, drawers yanked out and dumped. The few dishes she owned lay broken on the floor. Even the bathroom had been torn apart, the medicine cabinet hanging by one hinge. "Elena, don't touch anything." Adrian was behind her, his voice hard. "We need to document this." But Elena was already moving through the wreckage, cataloging what was gone. Her laptop, cheap, but hers. The cash she'd hidden in a coffee can. Her grandmother's bracelet, the only piece of jewelry she'd kept. "They took everything," she said numbly. "Not everything." Adrian crouched beside what used to be her bookshelf. "Your books are still here." He was right. Whoever had ransacked the place had ignored her small collection of novels and art history textbooks, which meant they weren't looking for valuables. They were looking for information. "What did they want?" Elena asked, more to herself than Adrian. "Leverage." Marcus had appeared in the doorway, his phone in hand. Evidence they could use against Mr. Russo, or proof of the pregnancy they could take back to Volkov. Elena's hand moved to her belly. "I didn't keep anything. No medical records, no—" She stopped. "The ultrasound." "What ultrasound?" Adrian stood, his attention sharp. "From the clinic. Week 12. They gave me a printout." Elena moved to the closet, dug through the pile of clothes that had been thrown on the floor. "I kept it in my coat pocket because I couldn't afford a frame, and I wanted—" Her hands found the coat. The pocket was empty. "They have it," she whispered. "They have proof." Adrian swore, low and vicious. "Marcus, I want every camera in a 3-block radius pulled. Traffic cams, security footage, everything. Someone saw who did this." "Already on it." Marcus was typing on his phone. "But boss, if they have proof of the pregnancy, I know what it means." Adrian's voice was ice. "It means Volkov's going to move faster than we thought." Elena sank down onto her ruined mattress, suddenly exhausted. "This is my fault. I should have been more careful. This is my fault." Adrian crouched in front of her. "You ran because of me. You've been hiding because of me. And now my enemies found you because you're connected to me. So what do? We get you out of here. Now." Adrian stood, pulled out his phone. "Pack whatever you can salvage. We're not coming back." Elena wanted to argue, but looking around at the destruction, she couldn't. This place wasn't safe anymore. Had never really been safe. She was just too desperate to see it. She gathered what she could, clothes that weren't slashed, the books Adrian had noticed, a few photos of her parents that had somehow survived. It all fit in one duffel bag. 6 months of her life reduced to 15 pounds of belongings. "Is this everything?" Adrian asked when she emerged from the bedroom. "Everything that matters." Elena looked around one last time. "The rest is just stuff." They left the building surrounded by Adrian's security, 3 men forming a perimeter as they walked to the waiting cars. Elena felt exposed, like a target painted on her back. Every window could hide a sniper. Every parked car could hold an enemy. She didn't breathe properly until they were in the vehicle and moving. "Where are we going?" she asked as they merged into traffic. "Back to the townhouse." Adrian was on his phone, firing off messages. "I need to make some calls, figure out our next move." "Our next move?" Elena tested the words. "You're including me now?" "I told you I would." Adrian looked up from his phone. "You want the truth? Here it is. Volkov just escalated. He's not watching anymore. He's moving. Which means we're out of time for subtle plays." "What's the non-subtle play?" "I'm going to offer him what he wants." Adrian's voice was flat. "A meeting, just him and me. No security, no backup." Elena's blood went cold. "That's suicide. That's the only way to end this without more bodies." Adrian pocketed his phone. "He wants my territory? Fine, we'll negotiate. But I'm going to make damn sure you and the girls are untouchable first." "How?" Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Marry me." Elena laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. "What? Marry me?" Adrian turned to face her fully. "Tonight, right now, before I meet with Volkov." "Are you insane?" "Legally, you'd be protected." Adrian spoke quickly, like he'd been planning this. "If something happens to me, everything transfers to my wife immediately. No probate, no waiting period. You and the girls would be set up before Volkov could make a move. We're already divorced, Elena pointed out. We were married. It didn't work. Because I was an asshole who didn't know how to love you without controlling you. Adrian's voice was raw. This is different. This is me trying to protect you the only way I know how. By trapping me in another marriage? By giving you options. Adrian grabbed her hand and she let him. Elena, if I die, you need legal protection. The will helps, but a wife has rights a girlfriend doesn't. And Volkov, he respects certain lines. He won't touch another man's wife, not directly. Elena pulled her hand back. So this is strategy. This is survival. Adrian looked at her with something desperate in his eyes. I'm not asking you to love me. I'm not asking you to stay married to me after this is over. I'm asking you to let me make sure my daughters have a mother who's alive to raise them. The words hit Elena like a physical blow, because underneath all the manipulation and control and history between them, that's what this came down to. Two little girls who deserved better than parents at war. If I say yes, Elena said slowly, what happens after? If you survive this meeting with Volkov, then we get divorced again. Clean, simple, uncontested. Adrian's voice was steady. You'll have the financial protection, the legal standing, and I'll sign whatever agreements you want about custody and visitation. You'd give up your rights to your own children? I'd give up anything to keep them safe. Adrian looked down at his hands, including the chance to be their father, if that's what you need. Elena studied him, searching for the trap, the hidden agenda, the control masquerading as protection, but all she saw was a man who was terrified and trying not to show it. One condition, she said. Anything. After you meet with Volkov, after this is over, you don't get to use this marriage as leverage. You don't get to claim rights over me or the girls just because we're legally married. It's paper, that's all. Agreed. Adrian pulled out his phone again. I have a judge who owes me a favor. We can do this in an hour. An hour? Elena's head was spinning. You want to get married in an hour? I want you protected before I walk into that meeting. Adrian was already dialing. Everything else can wait. The ceremony happened in the townhouse library, witnessed by Marcus and Dr. Reeves and a judge who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. There were no flowers, no music, no pretense that this was anything other than a legal transaction. Elena wore the same clothes she'd been wearing all day. Adrian didn't change his shirt. They stood in front of the judge and repeated words they'd said before, 2 years ago in a church full of people who'd come to see the wedding of the year. This time, there were 6 people in the room, and the whole thing took less than 10 minutes. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The judge closed his book with a snap. You may kiss the bride, I suppose. Adrian looked at Elena. Elena looked back. Neither of them moved. Or not, the judge muttered. Sign here. They signed. Elena's hand shook as she wrote her name, her married name, the one she'd spent 6 months trying to forget, Mrs. Adrian Russo. Again. When it was done, the judge and Dr. Reeves left quickly. Marcus lingered in the doorway, clearly uncomfortable. Boss, he said quietly, Volkov confirmed the meeting tomorrow night, the old warehouse on the docks. Good. Adrian's voice was emotionless. Make sure our people are in position. You said no backup. I said Volkov thinks there's no backup. Adrian's eyes were cold. I'm not that stupid. Marcus nodded and left. Elena and Adrian stood in the library, legally married and completely alone. So, Elena finally said, that happened. Yeah. Adrian moved to the bar, poured himself a drink. You want one? Oh, wait. I'm pregnant. I remember. Elena sank into one of the leather chairs. What now? Now you stay here while I prepare for tomorrow. Adrian downed the scotch in one swallow. Dr. Reeves will be here if you need anything. Marcus will have security on every entrance. And you? I'll be making sure Volkov doesn't walk away from our meeting. Adrian set the glass down. One way or another, this ends tomorrow. Elena stood, walked to where he stood by the bar. What if you don't walk away either? Then you'll be a very wealthy widow. Adrian's attempt at humor fell flat. The prenup's been voided by the new marriage. Everything's yours. I don't want your money. Elena reached out, hesitated, then placed her hand on his arm. I want you to come back alive. Adrian looked down at her hand, then up at her face. Why? Because those girls deserve to know their father. Elena swallowed hard. And because despite everything, despite all the reasons I have to hate you, I don't want you dead. That's not the same as wanting me alive. It's as close as I can get right now. Elena dropped her hand. Don't waste it. Adrian caught her hand before she could pull away completely. If I don't make it back, don't. Elena's voice was fierce. Don't do the deathbed confession thing. Don't tell me you love me or that you're sorry or any of that. Just promise me you'll try to survive. I promise. Adrian brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles gently. For them. For you. I'll try. He left her standing in the library, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Elena listened until she heard the front door close, then sank back into the chair. She was married. Again. To the same man she'd divorced 6 months ago, carrying his daughters, living in his house, waiting for him to either win a war or die trying. The absurdity of it would have been funny if it wasn't so terrifying. Dr. Reeves appeared in the doorway, carrying a tray with tea and sandwiches. Thought you might be hungry, she said gently. Elena was suddenly starving. Thank you. How are you holding up? The doctor set the tray down, felt Elena's pulse automatically. I just remarried my ex-husband so he could die with a clear conscience tomorrow. Elena picked up a sandwich. How do you think I'm holding up? Better than most would. Dr. Reeves sat across from her. For what it's worth, I think Adrian's going to survive this. Why? Because he has something to live for now. The doctor smiled. I've never seen him fight for anything the way he's fighting for you and those babies. He fought for me before. Elena's voice was bitter. By locking me up and controlling my every move. That wasn't fighting for you. That was fighting to keep you. Doctor. Reeves leaned forward. There's a difference, and I think he's finally learning what it is. Elena wanted to believe that. Wanted to think Adrian had changed, that this time would be different, but wanting something didn't make it true. What if he hasn't changed? She asked quietly. What if this is just another way to control me? Then you leave again. Dr. Reeves said it simply. You're stronger than you think, Elena. You survived 6 months alone, pregnant, with nothing. You can survive anything. The words settled something in Elena's chest. She could survive anything. She had. But for the first time in 6 months, she didn't want to just survive. She wanted to live. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in the guest room bed, listening to the sounds of the townhouse settling, and thought about the 2 lives growing inside her. 2 daughters who would need names, who would need more than just survival. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and wandered downstairs. The house was dark except for a light coming from Adrian's office on the 2nd floor. She shouldn't interrupt, should leave him alone to prepare for whatever was coming tomorrow. Instead, she knocked. Come in. Adrian's voice was rough. He sat at his desk, surrounded by papers and maps and what looked like building schematics. His shirt was unbuttoned, his hair messed up from running his hands through it. He looked exhausted and dangerous and somehow young. Can't sleep? He asked. Apparently not. Elena stepped into the room. What are you doing? Planning. Adrian gestured at the chaos on his desk. Volkov thinks he's walking into a negotiation. He's walking into a trap. You're going to kill him. If he gives me the chance, Adrian leaned back in his chair, but I'm hoping he'll be smart enough to take the deal I'm offering. What deal? Adrian pulled out a folder, slid it across the desk. Elena opened it, found herself looking at property deeds and financial statements. I'm giving him the territory he wants, Adrian said. 3 blocks in Brooklyn. Profitable but not essential to my operations. In exchange, he backs off, permanently. Will he take it? If he's smart. Adrian's jaw tightened. If he's not, well, that's what the backup plan is for. Elena closed the folder. You're trying to avoid a war. I'm trying to avoid getting you killed. Adrian stood, walked to the window. War is messy. Innocent people get caught in crossfire. And you and the girls, you'd be targets until one of us was dead. So you're choosing peace. I'm choosing you. Adrian turned from the window. And them. I'm choosing to be someone my daughters won't be ashamed of. The honesty of it made Elena's throat tight. They're going to need names, she said, changing the subject before she could cry. Names. Adrian's expression softened. Yeah, I suppose they will. I was thinking, Elena hesitated. My mother's name was Ava, and your mother was Lillian. Adrian's face did something complicated. You want to name them after our mothers. If that's okay, Elena wrapped her arms around herself. I know it's presumptuous, assuming you want to say It's perfect. Adrian's voice was thick. Ava and Lillian, our daughters. The way he said it, our daughters, made something crack in Elena's chest. Not break. Crack. Like something frozen beginning to thaw. Come here, Adrian said quietly. Elena should refuse, should maintain the distance between them. But her feet carried her across the room anyway, stopping just in front of him. Adrian reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand settled on her belly, gentle and reverent. Hey there, Ava, he said softly. And Lillian. It's your dad. I know you can't hear me yet, but... His voice broke. I'm going to try to be better than I was. Better than my father was. I'm going to try to be someone you can be proud of. Elena's hand covered his, pressing his palm harder against her belly. They're moving, she whispered. Can you feel it? Adrian's eyes went wide. That's them? That's them. They stood like that for a long moment, connected by the lives growing between them. Elena watched Adrian's face cycle through emotions, wonder and fear, and something that looked like desperate hope. I'm going to come back, he said, looking up at her. Tomorrow. I'm going to come back to you and them. I swear it. You can't promise that. Watch me. Adrian's hands moved from her belly to her face, cupping her cheeks. Elena, I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I ruined what we had before. But I swear on those girls' lives, I'm going to come back and spend the rest of my life proving I've changed. Elena should pull away. Should remind him this marriage was temporary, that she was only here until the danger passed. But standing in his office, his hands on her face and his promises hanging in the air between them, she couldn't make herself move. Don't make promises you can't keep, she whispered. I'm not. Adrian leaned his forehead against hers. I'm making promises I'll die trying to keep. The kiss happened without either of them deciding it should. One moment they were standing there, breathing the same air. The next, his mouth was on hers and she was kissing him back like she could pour 6 months of fear and loneliness and desperate hope into the contact. It was nothing like the kisses from their first marriage. No calculation, no performance. This was raw and real and tasted like goodbye. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers again. Go to bed, he said roughly. You need sleep. So do you. I will. A lie, and they both knew it. After I finished this, Elena stepped back, already feeling the loss of his warmth. Adrian? Yeah? Come back tomorrow. She said it fiercely. You promised. I promised. Adrian's eyes were dark and full of things he couldn't say. Get some rest, Elena. Tomorrow changes everything. Elena left him there, surrounded by his maps and plans and desperate strategies. She climbed the stairs to the guest room, crawled into bed, and pressed her hands against her belly. Your father's an idiot, she told her daughters. But he's trying. That's got to count for something. Under her palms, she felt movement. Ava and Lillian swimming in their warm darkness, oblivious to the war being waged over their existence. Elena closed her eyes and tried to sleep, knowing that tomorrow everything would change. One way or another, this ended. She just had to hope they'd all survive it. Elena woke to the sound of shouting. She bolted upright, heart hammering, disoriented in the gray light of early morning. The clock on the nightstand read 5:47 a.m. Below, men's voices overlapped in sharp bursts, Adrian's cutting through the others like a blade. She threw off the covers and rushed downstairs, her hand instinctively pressed to her belly. The voices were coming from Adrian's office, the door half open. Elena stopped just outside, listening. Absolute bullshit, and you know it. That was Adrian, furious in a way she'd rarely heard. Who leaked the location? We don't know yet. Marcus sounded exhausted. But Volkov knows about the warehouse. He's demanding a different location. Of course he is. Because someone told him we had the place rigged. Adrian's fist slammed into something. The desk, probably. How deep does this go? How many of my own people are working for him? We're running everyone through background again, but boss, but what? If we can't trust the location, we can't trust the setup. Marcus's voice dropped. You walk in there without backup, we can verify, you're dead. Plain and simple. Elena's blood went cold. She pushed the door open, not caring that she was interrupting. Both men turned to look at her, Adrian's face still twisted with anger, Marcus looking guilty. What happened? Elena demanded. Nothing that concerns you, Adrian said automatically, then caught himself. Sorry, that came out wrong. Try again. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, making it stand up in about 5 different directions. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. The meeting location was compromised. Volkov knows we planned an ambush. So call it off. I can't. Adrian's voice was flat. If I back out now, he'll see it as weakness. He'll push harder. More people will die. Then pick a different location, Elena said. He already did. Sent the coordinates an hour ago. Adrian pulled up something on his phone, showed her a map with a pin dropped in what looked like the middle of nowhere. Abandoned factory in Queens. No cover. No way to position my people without being seen. Elena studied the map, her mind racing. So it's a trap. Everything's a trap. Adrian pocketed the phone. The question is whether I'm walking into his trap or he's walking into mine. Boss, you can't seriously be considering this. Marcus stepped forward. This is suicide. Let me go instead. Or send someone else. He wants me specifically. Adrian's jaw was set. And if I don't show, he'll escalate. Hit another club, another warehouse, more bodies, and eventually, his eyes cut to Elena. Eventually, he'll come after the real leverage. Meaning her. Meaning the babies. There has to be another way, Elena said. There isn't. Adrian moved to the window, staring out at the dawn-lit street. I've run every scenario. This is the only play that keeps you safe. What about the play that keeps you alive? That's what I'm working on. Adrian turned back to face them. Marcus, I want eyes on that factory. Every entrance, every window. If there's a way to get our people inside without Volkov seeing, I want it found. I'm on it. Marcus headed for the door, paused. For what it's worth, sir, I think you're making the right call. After he left, Elena and Adrian stood in silence. The office felt smaller somehow, the walls pressing in. You should eat something, Adrian finally said. Dr. Reeves said, I don't care what Dr. Reeves said. Elena crossed her arms. You're not doing this. Elena, no. Her voice was sharp. You promised me you'd come back. You stood in this office last night and promised me you'd come back to those girls, and now you're planning to walk into an ambush? I'm planning to end this. Adrian's voice rose to match hers. What do you want me to do? Let Volkov keep coming? Wait until he decides to grab you off the street? Hope he's merciful when he figures out you're carrying twins? I want you to find a solution that doesn't get you killed. There isn't one. Adrian slammed his hand on the desk again, papers scattering. You think I want this? You think I'm not terrified of leaving you alone with 2 babies and enemies still circling? But I'm out of options, Elena. This is all I have left. Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes and hated herself for it. Then let me help. Absolutely not. You said you'd include me. You said no more secrets. That was before someone leaked our plans to Volkov. Adrian's voice softened. I can't trust anyone right now except Marcus and Dr. Reeves. And you. But I sure as hell am not putting you in danger. I'm already in danger. Elena moved closer. The second they found my apartment, I was in danger. So stop trying to protect me from information and start using me. Adrian stared at her. Using you how? I don't know. Elena's mind was racing, trying to think like Adrian did, trying to see the angles. But you're so focused on the meeting, on Volkov. What if that's the wrong play? What if the real move is finding out who leaked the information? Adrian went very still. Keep talking. You said someone close to you is feeding Volkov intel. Someone who knew about the warehouse, who knew about your plans. Elena started pacing, the way she used to when she was working through a difficult art history problem in college. What if you use that? Feed them false information. See who bites. I can't risk tipping off the leak that we know about them." "Then don't." Elena stopped pacing. "Give different information to different people. See which version gets back to Volkov. Process of elimination." Adrian was looking at her like he'd never seen her before. "That could work. It's too late, though, isn't it?" Elena's brief hope deflated. "The meeting's tonight." "No." Adrian was already pulling out his phone. "No, it's perfect. Volkov thinks he has the advantage. Thinks he knows where I'm going to be and what I'm planning, but if I can feed him bad intel through the leak..." He was dialing before he finished the sentence. "Marcus, I need you back here, now, and bring the full team roster." 20 minutes later, the office was crowded with men Elena didn't recognize. Marcus introduced them rapid fire, security team leaders, all of whom had been with Adrian for years. They looked confused about being summoned at 6 in the morning. Adrian stood at the head of the room like a general addressing troops. "One of you is working for Volkov," he said without preamble. "I don't know who, but I know it's someone in this room." The men erupted in protests and denials. Adrian let them shout for about 10 seconds before slamming his hand on the desk. The room went silent. "Here's what's going to happen," Adrian continued. "I'm going to give each of you different information about tonight's meeting, different times, different backup plans, different positions for our people. And then we're going to see which version Volkov knows about." "Boss, that's..." one of the men started. "Non-negotiable." Adrian's voice was ice. "Marcus will take you one by one into the library. You'll get your briefing. You'll confirm you understand. And then you'll wait in separate rooms until this is over." "You're locking us up?" The same man who'd spoken before, thick neck, scarred knuckles, looked furious. "I'm keeping my wife and children alive." Adrian's hand moved to Elena's shoulder, a possessive gesture that should have annoyed her but somehow didn't. "So yeah, you're staying here until I know which of you I can trust." The men filed out with Marcus, grumbling but compliant. When the last one was gone, Adrian sagged against the desk. "This is insane," he muttered. "It's smart," Elena corrected. "Assuming Volkov contacts whoever the leak is before tonight. He will. He'll want confirmation that I'm still coming." Adrian checked his watch. "We've got 12 hours. If this doesn't work..." "It'll work." Elena said it with more confidence than she felt. The waiting was brutal. Elena tried to read, tried to rest, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw Adrian walking into that factory and not walking out. By noon, she'd given up on pretending to be calm and paced the length of the townhouse until Dr. Reeves physically made her sit down. "You're going to wear a hole in the floor," the doctor said gently. "And stress isn't good for the babies. My husband is planning to confront a man who wants him dead." Elena's voice came out sharper than she meant. "I think a little stress is inevitable. Understandable, but controllable." Dr. Reeves pulled out her blood pressure cuff. "Let me check your vitals. When's the last time you ate?" Elena couldn't remember. "Breakfast, maybe?" The doctor tisked and disappeared, returning with a sandwich and fruit that Elena forced herself to eat while Dr. Reeves monitored her blood pressure. "A little elevated, but not dangerous," the doctor said. "Try to breathe. Adrian knows what he's doing." "Does he?" Elena set down the sandwich. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like he's preparing to die." "He's preparing to survive," Dr. Reeves sat across from her. "I've known Adrian for 5 years. I've seen him in impossible situations before. He always finds a way through. This is different. Yes, because this time he has something to lose." The doctor smiled sadly. Before, Adrian was reckless because he didn't care if he lived or died. Now, he's terrified, which makes him dangerous in a completely different way. At 3 p.m., Marcus burst into the room where Elena was trying and failing to nap. "We got him," he said, slightly out of breath. "The leak. We know who it is." Elena was on her feet before she realized she'd moved. "Who?" "Paul Kowalski. Been with us for 3 years. Volkov got to him 6 months ago. Threatened his sister." Marcus looked disgusted. "He just tried to make a call. We intercepted it." "What did he tell Volkov?" "That the boss is planning to arrive at the factory at 9 p.m. with minimal security. That our backup is positioned at the north entrance." Marcus pulled out his phone, showed her a text message. "Volkov just confirmed the meeting time. He's taking the bait." Elena felt her heart start to race. "So what's the real plan?" That's between me and the boss. Marcus's expression softened. Ma'am, you should try to rest. This is going to be a long night. But Elena couldn't rest, couldn't eat, could barely breathe as the hours ticked by and Adrian disappeared into his office with Marcus and didn't come out. She sat in the library, her hands pressed to her belly, and talked to her daughters. Your father's an idiot, she told them. But he's our idiot, so he has to come back, okay? He has to. At 7 p.m., Adrian finally emerged. He changed into dark clothes, tactical gear that made him look like he was going to war, which Elena supposed he was. I'm leaving in an hour, he said without preamble. Elena stood. I want to come with you. Absolutely not. Not to the factory. But, she struggled to find the words. I can't just sit here. I can't wait and wonder and imagine you dead in a dozen different ways. Adrian crossed the room, took her hands. Elena, I need you here. Safe. Where I know Volkov can't touch you. And I need you to come back. Elena's voice broke. Please, Adrian. Please don't make me a widow again before I've been your wife for 48 hours. Again? Adrian's mouth quirked despite everything. Technically, you were never a widow. You know what I mean. I do. Adrian pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her carefully, mindful of her belly. I'm coming back. I swear it. I'm coming back to you and Ava and Lillian, and we're going to figure out how to be a family. You can't promise that. I already did. Adrian kissed her forehead. Last night, remember? Elena remembered. Remembered his hands on her face, his promises hanging between them like prayers. I love you, she heard herself say. I know I shouldn't. I know it's stupid and complicated and probably a mistake, but I love you, so you have to come back. Adrian went very still. Say that again. I love you. Elena pulled back to look at his face. Despite everything, despite all the reasons I shouldn't, I love you. Adrian kissed her then, deep and desperate and tasting like goodbye and hello all at once. When they broke apart, there were tears on his face. I love you too, he said roughly. I never stopped, not for a single day. Then prove it. Elena gripped his shirt. Come back alive. I will. Adrian kissed her again, softer this time. I promise. He left at 8 p.m., Marcus at his side and 3 other men Elena didn't know following behind. She watched from the window until the cars disappeared around the corner, then sank into a chair and waited. Dr. Reeves stayed with her, sitting quietly and not trying to make conversation. The clock on the mantel ticked steadily forward. 8:30. 9. 9:15. Elena's phone buzzed at 9:47 p.m. Unknown number. She grabbed it with shaking hands. Meeting in progress. He's alive. That was it. No details, no reassurance, just 5 words that meant Adrian was still breathing. Elena clutched the phone and kept waiting. At 10:23, her phone rang. Marcus's number this time. Is he? She started. He's alive. Marcus sounded exhausted. Shot, but alive. We're bringing him home now. The phone slipped from Elena's fingers. Dr. Reeves caught it, spoke rapidly to Marcus while Elena tried to remember how to breathe. Shot. Adrian was shot, but alive. How bad? Elena managed to ask when the doctor hung up. Marcus said it's not life-threatening, shoulder wound, but he needs treatment. Dr. Reeves was already moving, pulling out her medical bag. They'll be here in 10 minutes. Those 10 minutes felt like hours. Elena paced the foyer, her heart hammering so hard she thought the babies could probably feel it. When she finally heard the car pull up, she yanked the door open before anyone could knock. Adrian stumbled through the door supported by Marcus, his left shoulder soaked in blood. But he was walking, breathing, alive. Hey, he said when he saw her, attempting a smile. Told you I'd come back. Then his eyes rolled back and he collapsed. Doctor. Reeves caught him before he hit the ground, shouting orders at Marcus to get him to the medical suite. Elena followed them up the stairs, her legs shaking, watching as they laid Adrian on the examination table. Out, Dr. Reeves said firmly. I need space to work. No. Elena planted her feet. I'm staying. The doctor looked like she wanted to argue, then saw Elena's face and nodded. Fine. But stay out of the way. Elena pressed herself against the wall and watched as Dr. Reeves cut away Adrian's blood-soaked shirt. The bullet wound was high on his left shoulder, an angry hole still oozing blood, but the doctor's hands were steady as she cleaned and examined it. Bullet went through, she said, more to herself than anyone. No major vessels hit. He's lucky. Lucky. Elena almost laughed. Adrian was lying unconscious with a bullet hole in his shoulder, and the doctor called it lucky. But he was alive. That was what mattered. Doctor. Reeves worked efficiently, cleaning the wound, stitching the entry and exit points, bandaging the shoulder. Adrian didn't wake during any of it, his face pale but peaceful. Is he going to be okay? Elena asked when the doctor finally stepped back. He'll be fine. Dr. Reeves stripped off her bloody gloves. He passed out from blood loss and shock, but there's no permanent damage. He needs rest and antibiotics and someone to keep an eye on him for the next few days. I'll do it. The words were out before Elena could think about them. Dr. Reeves smiled. I thought you might. Marcus appeared in the doorway, looking grim. We need to talk, he said to Elena, about what happened. Elena looked at Adrian, still unconscious on the table, then back at Marcus. Tell me. The meeting went sideways fast, Marcus said. Volkov came with twice the men he said he'd bring, but the boss was ready for it. He'd positioned our people in places Volkov didn't know to look for. When the shooting started, Adrian walked right into it, Elena guessed. Yeah, took a bullet, saving one of our guys. Marcus's voice was rough. But he got Volkov, put 2 rounds center mass before he went down. Elena's stomach turned. Volkov's dead? Extremely. Marcus didn't sound sorry about it. His operation's going to collapse without him. We've already got people moving in to secure his territory. By tomorrow morning, the threat's over. Over. The word didn't feel real. What about the leak? Elena asked. Kowalski? Dealt with. Marcus's expression was hard. He won't be a problem anymore. Elena didn't ask what that meant, didn't want to know. The boss did good tonight, Marcus said quietly. He ended this. You and the babies are safe now. After Marcus left, Elena pulled a chair up beside Adrian's examination table and took his hand. His fingers were cold, his pulse steady under her touch. You came back, she whispered. You promised, and you came back. Adrian's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and hazy with pain. Elena? I'm here. She squeezed his hand. You're okay. Dr. Reeves says you're going to be fine. Volkov? Dead. It's over. Adrian's eyes drifted closed again. Good. The girls are safe. We're all safe. Elena lifted his hand to her lips. Because you're an idiot who walked into gunfire. Had to. Adrian's words were slurring together. Had to keep you safe. You did. You kept us all safe. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. Now you have to get better, okay? Because I didn't fall in love with you again just to lose you to an infection. Love me? Adrian's eyes opened again, clearer this time. You said that before. Did I dream it? You didn't dream it. Elena smiled through her tears. I love you, I'm furious with you and terrified for you and completely in love with you. Good. Adrian's grip on her hand tightened slightly. Because I love you too. Always have. He drifted off again, his breathing evening out into sleep. Elena sat beside him through the night, watching the rise and fall of his chest, feeling the steady pulse in his wrist. He'd come back. Against all odds, against every fear she'd had, he'd come back. And for the first time since that rainy November night when their eyes met across Fifth Avenue, Elena let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. Adrian woke to pale winter sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, and the feeling that he'd been hit by a truck. His left shoulder was on fire. His mouth tasted like something had died in it, and when he tried to sit up, the room spun violently. Don't move, you idiot! Elena's voice came from somewhere to his right. Dr. Reeves said you need to stay still for at least another day. Adrian turned his head, slowly, because fast movements made him want to vomit, and found Elena curled up in a chair beside the bed. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a messy knot. She'd never looked more beautiful. How long was I out? His voice came out like gravel. 18 hours. Elena stood, poured water from a pitcher on the nightstand. Dr. Reeves had to sedate you twice because you kept trying to get up. I don't remember that. Yeah, well, you were pretty out of it. She held the water to his lips, helped him drink. You kept saying you had to check on me and the babies. It was annoying and kind of sweet. Adrian managed a weak smile. Volkov? Still dead. Marcus has been handling cleanup. Apparently half of Volkov's operation surrendered within 12 hours of him dying. Elena set the water down. Turns out loyalty in the criminal underworld isn't as strong as people think. Smart people knew when to switch sides. Adrian tried to sit up again, made it about 3 inches before the pain stopped him. Shit. Bullet wound in the shoulder tends to hurt. Elena's voice was dry, but her hands were gentle as she adjusted his pillows. You're lucky it didn't hit bone. I'm lucky I'm alive. Yeah. Elena sat back down, and for the first time Adrian saw the tremor in her hands. You are. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what had almost happened hanging between them. Adrian studied Elena's face, seeing the fear she was trying to hide, the exhaustion she couldn't. You stayed with me, he said quietly. Where else would I be? Running, like you've been doing for 6 months. Adrian reached for her hand with his good arm. Elena, you don't have to stay now. Volkov's dead. The threat's over. You and the girls are safe. Elena looked down at their joined hands. Is that what you want? For me to leave? No. The word came out fierce. But I told you this marriage was just for protection, that you could walk away when it was over. And I can. Elena met his eyes. I could leave right now. Take my things and disappear again. But the question is, do I want to? Adrian's heart was hammering so hard he thought it might crack a rib. Do you? I don't know. Elena pulled her hand back, stood, started pacing. 6 months ago I ran because I couldn't breathe in this life. Because being with you meant being owned, controlled, suffocated. And I swore I'd never go back to that. You shouldn't. Adrian forced the words out even though they tasted like ash. If that's what being with me means, you should run. Take the money, take the girls, build a life somewhere I can't touch. Except that's not what being with you means anymore, is it? Elena stopped pacing, turned to face him. The man I left wouldn't have let me get my own things from that apartment, wouldn't have married me without conditions, wouldn't have walked into gunfire to protect people he barely knows. I had to end it, had to make sure you were safe. I know, and that's the problem. Elena wrapped her arms around herself. Because now I can't figure out if you've actually changed or if this is just a new version of control, protecting me by dying for me instead of locking me up. The accusation stung because it was fair. Adrian looked down at his bandaged shoulder, thought about the moment Volkov's gun had come up and he'd stepped in front of one of his own men without thinking. Not because it was strategic, because it was right. I don't know if I've changed, he admitted. I know I'm trying. I know I want to be someone our daughters don't have to be afraid of. But Elena, I spent 34 years being one kind of man. I can't promise I won't slip back into old patterns. I'm not asking for promises. Elena moved back to the chair, sat on the edge. I'm asking for honesty. Can you love me without owning me? Can you protect me without controlling me? Can you be a father without being a dictator? Adrian thought about his own father, cold and distant, and more concerned with empire than family. Thought about the man he'd become trying to prove he was different, only to end up the same in all the ways that mattered. I don't know, he said finally, but I want to try. If you'll let me. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her hand pressed to her belly. They're moving, she said softly. Ava and Lillian, I think they know their father's voice. Can I? Adrian started to reach out, then stopped. Can I feel? Elena stood, came to the bed, took his good hand and pressed it against her belly. Under his palm, he felt the flutter of movement, small and insistent and absolutely real. That's them, Elena whispered. That's our daughters. Adrian felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been locked and frozen for longer than he could remember. Hi, girls, he said, his voice rough. Sorry I scared you. I'm going to try to do better. Elena's hand covered his, holding it against her belly. We're going to hold you to that. I know. Adrian looked up at her. Elena, I can't promise I'll be perfect. I can't promise I won't mess this up 100 different ways, but I swear I'll try. Every day. For the rest of my life. That's all I'm asking for. Elena bent down, kissed him gently. Don't die on me, okay? These girls need their father. And their mother needs her husband? Elena smiled against his lips. Maybe. We'll see. The next 3 days were a blur of healing and planning and slowly learning how to be in the same space without the weight of Volkov hanging over them. Adrian was a terrible patient, restless and irritable and trying to work from bed until Dr. Reeves threatened to sedate him again. Elena hovered between wanting to help and wanting to smother him with a pillow. You're supposed to be resting, she said on day 3, finding him on his laptop reviewing financial reports. I am resting. I'm sitting down, aren't I? You're working. That's the opposite of resting. Elena closed the laptop, ignoring his protest. Dr. Reeves said no stress for at least a week. Running a business empire is stressful by definition. Then delegate. Elena sat on the edge of the bed. Marcus can handle things. You said yourself he's your most trusted person. Adrian sighed, rubbed his face with his good hand. You're right. I know you're right. But sitting here doing nothing while my whole operation could be falling apart is what you have to do if you want to be alive for your daughter's birth. Elena's voice was firm. You almost died, Adrian. You lost enough blood that Dr. Reeves said another 10 minutes, and you wouldn't have made it. So yeah, you're going to sit here and rest and let other people do the work. Because I didn't survive 6 months alone and marry you twice just to lose you to your own stubbornness. Adrian looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but on one condition. You don't get to make conditions when you're the injured one. This one's non-negotiable. Adrian reached for her hand. Move into the master bedroom with me. Stop sleeping in the guest room like you're just visiting. Elena's breath caught. Adrian, not for sex. Not for anything except being close to you. His grip on her hand tightened. Elena, I almost died without getting to hold you one more time. Without getting to fall asleep next to you. And I need to know you're there. Please. Elena should say no. Should maintain the distance between them until she was sure this was real. But looking at Adrian, pale and wounded and more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him, she couldn't make herself refuse. Okay, she said quietly. But just sleeping. Nothing else until Dr. Reeves clears you. Deal. Adrian's smile was tired but genuine. Thank you. That night, Elena moved her things into the master bedroom, a space she'd never seen before. All dark wood and expensive linens, and completely impersonal. Adrian watched from the bed as she unpacked, his eyes tracking her movements. What? Elena asked when she caught him staring. Nothing, just, you're here. You're really here. Adrian shifted, trying to get comfortable. For 6 months I slept in this bed alone and tried to imagine you back in my life. It never felt real. Elena climbed into bed beside him, careful of his injured shoulder. Well, I'm real, and very pregnant, and about to make your life incredibly complicated. It's already complicated. Adrian's good arm came around her, pulled her carefully against his side. This is just a better kind of complicated. Elena settled against him, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. It should have felt wrong, too fast, too soon, too much like falling back into old patterns, but instead it felt like coming home after a long, cold journey. Adrian, she said into the darkness. Yeah? Tell me about your mother, about Lillian. Adrian went still. Why? Because we're naming one of our daughters after her. Because I want to know if she'd be proud of who you're trying to become. Elena pressed her hand to his chest. Because I want to understand you better. Adrian was quiet for so long, Elena thought he wasn't going to answer. Then his voice came, soft and rough with memory. She died when I was 8. Cancer. My father, he didn't handle it well. Threw himself into work, into building the empire, into making sure I knew how to be strong. Adrian's arm tightened around Elena. I used to think he did it because he loved her too much to survive losing her. Now I think he just didn't know how to be human without her. Is that what you're afraid of? Elena asked quietly, turning into him. Every day. Adrian's voice cracked. I look at you and the girls, and I think, what if I mess this up the way he did? What if I'm so busy trying to protect you that I forget to love you? What if our daughters grow up afraid of me? Elena pushed herself up on one elbow, looked down at him in the dim light. Then we'll work on it. Together. Because Adrian, you're not your father. You're trying. That already makes you different. Trying isn't the same as succeeding. No, but it's the first step. Elena kissed him gently, and we'll figure out the rest as we go. They fell asleep like that, tangled together in the darkness, two broken people trying to build something whole. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Adrian healed slowly, his shoulders still stiff but functional. Elena's pregnancy advanced, her belly growing until she could barely see her feet. They fought about stupid things, Adrian's tendency to work too much, Elena's refusal to let him hire a full-time nurse, whose turn it was to pick what they watched on TV. Normal couple things that felt revolutionary after everything they'd been through. Dr. Reeves came by twice a week to check on both of them, monitoring Adrian's healing and the twins' development. At 32 weeks, she ordered Elena on modified bed rest. Your blood pressure's creeping up, the doctor said, her expression serious. And with twins, we're already high risk. I want you resting as much as possible for the next few weeks. How much is as much as possible? Elena asked, lying down except for bathroom trips and meals. Dr. Reeves packed up her equipment. I know it's not fun, but it's necessary. We want to get you to at least 36 weeks before delivery. Adrian had been hovering in the doorway. Now he stepped forward. Whatever you need, I'll make sure she follows orders. I'm right here, Elena said irritably, and I can follow my own orders, thank you. But she couldn't really. Bed rest was torture. Hours of lying still while her body rebelled and the babies kicked, and Adrian tried to keep her entertained with movies and books and increasingly desperate conversation topics. Tell me something I don't know about you, Adrian said one afternoon, lying beside her on top of the covers. Like what? Anything. We were married for 2 years and I feel like I barely knew you. Adrian turned his head to look at her. So tell me something real, something you never told me before. Elena thought about it. I wanted to be an art restorer. When I was in college, I was going to move to Italy and work in museums and spend my life bringing old paintings back to life. Why didn't you? Because I met you. Elena's voice was soft. And suddenly I was planning a wedding instead of applying for graduate programs. And then I was a wife, and wives don't disappear to Italy for years of training. Adrian flinched. I didn't know. I didn't tell you. Elena turned to face him. I think part of me was afraid you'd say no, that you'd tell me it wasn't practical, or that I needed to focus on being your wife, so I just stopped wanting it. Elena, it's okay. She cut him off. I made my choice, but I think, after the girls are born, after things settle down, maybe I could take some courses online, start working toward that dream again. Yes, Adrian's voice was fierce. Absolutely yes. Whatever you need to make that happen, I'll support you. Even if it means me being busy, not being available whenever you need me? Especially then. Adrian reached for her hand. I don't want a wife who exists only for me. I want a partner who has her own dreams. And if that means juggling babies and coursework and restoration projects, we'll figure it out. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. You mean that? I mean that. Adrian brought her hand to his lips. Tell me what else. What else did you give up that you want back? They spent the afternoon trading secrets, small confessions and big dreams, and all the things they'd never said in 2 years of marriage. Elena learned that Adrian had wanted to be a teacher before his father died and left him the empire, that he played piano but hadn't touched one in years, that he was terrified of being a father because his own had been so distant. Adrian learned that Elena missed painting, that she'd sold all her supplies when she ran because she needed the money, that she dreamed of teaching their daughters to see beauty in the world, that she was equally terrified of motherhood, but for different reasons, because her own mother had died when she was 12 and she didn't remember enough about her to know how to do it right. We're a mess, Elena said when the sun started to set and the room filled with golden light. Yeah, Adrian kissed her forehead. But we're a mess together. That has to count for something. At 35 weeks, Elena woke up to pain, not the usual pregnancy discomfort, but sharp cramping that made her gasp and grab Adrian's arm. Something's wrong, she managed. Adrian was out of bed and on the phone with Dr. Reeves before Elena could blink. Within minutes, the doctor was there examining Elena with practiced efficiency. "You're in early labor," Dr. Reeves said. "Probably brought on by stress and the twins deciding they're done cooking." "It's too early," Elena said, fear making her voice shake. 35 weeks for twins is actually pretty good." The doctor's voice was calm. "They'll need some time in the NICU, but their chances are excellent. But Elena, we need to get you to the hospital, now." The drive to the hospital was a blur. Adrian held Elena's hand in the back of the car, his face pale but determined. Marcus drove like he was in a chase scene, weaving through Manhattan traffic while Elena tried to breathe through contractions. "You're going to be okay," Adrian kept saying. "You and the girls, you're all going to be okay." "Promise me," Elena gasped between contractions. "Promise me if something goes wrong." "Nothing's going wrong." "Adrian, promise me." Elena gripped his hand hard enough to hurt. "If you have to choose between me and the babies, I'm not choosing." Adrian's voice was steel. "You're all coming through this, all three of you." They made it to the hospital with time to spare, barely. Elena was wheeled into a delivery room while doctors and nurses swarmed, checking monitors and prepping for a twin delivery. Adrian stayed by her side, still holding her hand, refusing to leave even when the medical team suggested he might be more comfortable in the waiting room. "I'm not leaving," he said flatly. "She's my wife. They're my daughters. I'm staying." The next few hours were chaos and pain, and Adrian's voice in her ear telling her she was strong. She could do this. She was amazing. Elena focused on breathing, on pushing when they told her to push, on the pressure and the pain and the overwhelming sensation of her body doing something she had no control over. And then, a cry. Small and indignant and absolutely perfect. "It's a girl," someone announced, and Elena watched through tears as they held up a tiny, squirming baby covered in vernix and screaming her lungs out. "Ava," Elena whispered. 3 minutes later, a second cry joined the first. "Another girl," the doctor said, and Elena caught a glimpse of another impossibly small person before they whisked both babies away to be cleaned and checked. Adrian was crying openly now, his forehead pressed to Elena's as they both shook with relief and exhaustion and joy. "You did it," he kept saying. "You did it. They're here. They're perfect." "Are they okay?" Elena tried to sit up but couldn't. "I need to see them." "They're checking them now," a nurse said gently. "Both babies are breathing on their own, which is excellent for 35 weeks. We'll bring them to you as soon as we can." It felt like an eternity, but was probably only 10 minutes before they brought the babies back. 2 tiny bundles wrapped in hospital blankets, each wearing a hat that was still too big for their heads. "Ava Russo," a nurse said, placing the first baby in Elena's arms. 4 pounds, 6 ounces. Elena looked down at her daughter, at the tiny face scrunched up in displeasure, the miniature fingers curled into fists, the complete perfection of her, and felt her heart crack open. "Hi, baby girl," she whispered. "I'm your mama." The second nurse handed the other baby to Adrian, who took her like she was made of glass and might shatter. "Lillian Russo," the nurse said. 4 pounds, 8 ounces. Adrian stared down at his daughter, and Elena watched him fall completely and irrevocably in love. His hands were shaking, tears streaming down his face, and when Lillian opened her eyes and looked at him, he made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "She's so small," he said, his voice breaking. "How is something this small even possible?" "Carefully," Elena said, smiling despite her own tears. "Come here, sit with us." Adrian carefully lowered himself into the chair beside the bed, cradling Lillian against his chest. Elena shifted Ava in her arms, and for a moment they just sat there, 2 broken people holding 2 perfect miracles and trying to understand how they'd gotten so lucky. "We made them," Adrian said, wonder in his voice. "We made these perfect little humans." "We did." Elena reached out, took his free hand. "And now we have to figure out how to raise them. Together." Adrian squeezed her hand. "We do it together." The babies had to spend 2 weeks in the NICU, their tiny bodies learning to regulate temperature and weight and all the things full-term babies did naturally. Elena and Adrian practically lived at the hospital, taking turns holding the girls, learning to feed them through tiny tubes, memorizing every sound and movement. It was Adrian who broke down first, standing over Lillian's incubator on day 5, and suddenly sobbing so hard he had to sit down. "I can't do this," he said when Elena rushed over.
"Elena, I can't. What if I mess this up? What if I'm a terrible father? What if I hurt them without meaning to?"
Elena sat beside him, pulled his head onto her shoulder. "Then we'll fix it, together. Because Adrian, you're already a good father. You're here, you're trying, you love them so much you're terrified. That's what good parents do. Your mother would have been better at this." "Maybe." Elena kissed his temple. "But she's not here. We are. And we're going to figure it out, one day at a time." They brought the babies home on a cold February morning, both girls bundled in matching pink snowsuits that made them look like tiny astronauts. The nursery was finished. Yellow walls and 2 cribs and shelves full of books Elena had already started reading aloud. Marcus had installed a security system that could detect a mouse at 50 yards. Dr. Reeves had stocked them with enough supplies to survive a siege. And still, standing in the nursery with a daughter in each arm, Elena felt completely unprepared. "We don't know what we're doing," she said. "No." Adrian stood beside her, looking equally terrified. "But we'll learn." The first weeks were brutal. The girls had different sleep schedules, different feeding patterns, different ways of crying that Elena and Adrian slowly learned to interpret. There were nights when they both sat in the nursery at 3 a.m., each holding a screaming baby and looking at each other with expressions of complete despair. But there were also moments of perfect peace. Ava falling asleep on Adrian's chest, her tiny hand wrapped around his finger. Lillian making small cooing sounds while Elena changed her diaper. Both girls lying in their cribs, staring at each other like they were having entire conversations no one else could hear. "I love you," Adrian said one night, holding Ava while Elena fed Lillian. "I know I've said it before, but I need you to know. I love you more than I knew it was possible to love anyone. You and these girls, you're everything." Elena looked at him. This man who'd controlled her and then let her go, who'd almost died protecting her, who was now covered in spit-up and hadn't slept in 3 days, and looked at his daughters like they hung the moon. "I love you too," she said, "and I'm not running anymore." "Promise?" "Promise." Elena smiled. "You're stuck with us. All 3 of us." 6 months later, Elena sat in the garden behind the townhouse, a space Adrian had converted from a weed-choked mess into something beautiful, and watched her husband try to convince their daughters that grass was not, in fact, food. "Lillian, no," Adrian said for the 4th time, gently pulling a fistful of lawn from his daughter's mouth. "We don't eat grass. We eat the organic baby food your mother insists on making from scratch." Ava, meanwhile, had discovered a flower and was methodically pulling it apart with scientific precision. Elena made a mental note to start saving for the inevitable therapy bills. "They're hopeless," Adrian announced, carrying both girls back to where Elena sat. "Beautiful and perfect and absolutely hopeless." "They're 6 months old." Elena took Lillian, settled her on her lap. "Give them time." "I'm giving them everything." Adrian sat beside her, Ava in his arms, including a father who's still figuring out how not to be a control freak. "You're doing better." Elena leaned against his shoulder. "You only tried to interview 3 nannies last week instead of the usual 6. We need backup childcare. We have Dr. Reeves on speed dial and Marcus, who's surprisingly good at changing diapers." Elena smiled. "We're fine." Adrian looked down at Ava, who was now trying to eat his watch. "I never thought I could have this. A family. A wife who actually wants to be here. Daughters who—" His voice caught. "Daughters who smile when they see me." "Of course they smile when they see you." Elena reached over, squeezed his hand. "You're their father, and despite your many flaws, you're actually pretty good at it." "Many flaws?" "So many flaws," Elena grinned. "But I love you anyway." They sat in the garden as the sun set, 2 former enemies who'd become lovers, and then enemies again, and finally, impossibly, partners. The girls babbled at each other in their own language, oblivious to the war that had been fought over their existence, the sacrifices made to keep them safe. "Elena?" Adrian said as the light turned gold. "Yeah?" "Thank you." His voice was quiet. "For running, for coming back. for giving me a chance to be better than I was. Elena thought about the girl she'd been on that rainy November night, terrified and alone and convinced she had to do everything herself. Thought about all the ways she'd broken and healed and learned that strength wasn't the same as solitude. "Thank you for letting me go," she said, "and for fighting to get me back." Ava chose that moment to grab Adrian's nose with both hands and yank. Lillian saw this and laughed, a pure, delighted sound that made both adults stop and stare. "Was that—" Adrian started. "Her first laugh." Elena felt tears on her face. "That was her first laugh." They stayed in the garden until the mosquitoes drove them inside, carrying their daughters through the townhouse that had transformed from a prison to a home. The nursery was chaos, toys scattered across the floor, tiny clothes in various states of organization, 2 cribs that the girls refused to sleep in separately. Elena stood in the doorway while Adrian put the girls down for the night, watching him move between the cribs with practiced ease, his voice soft as he sang a lullaby she'd taught him. This was her life now. Not perfect. Perfection was a lie. But real. Messy and complicated and full of love she'd stopped believing was possible. "They're out," Adrian said, joining her in the doorway. "Took less than 15 minutes. That's a new record. We're getting better at this." Elena leaned into him, let his arms come around her. At all of it. "Yeah." Adrian kissed the top of her head. "We are." Downstairs, the doorbell rang. Marcus, probably, with the security reports Adrian insisted on reviewing every night. Elena started to pull away, but Adrian held on. "Let him wait," he said. "Just stay here, with me. Just for a minute." So Elena stayed, wrapped in her husband's arms, listening to the quiet breathing of their daughters, and thought about all the ways love could break you, and all the ways it could put you back together. She'd run from this man, had hidden from him for 6 months, had sworn she'd never let him back into her life. But standing here in the doorway of their nursery, watching Ava and Lillian sleep in the yellow room their father had built, hoping for a second chance, Elena understood something she hadn't before. Love wasn't about control. It was about choice. And every day, she chose this. Chose him. Chose the messy, imperfect, beautiful life they were building together. "I'm not going anywhere," she said into the darkness. Adrian's arms tightened around her. "Good, because I'm never letting you go again." And for the first time since that rainy November night, Elena believed him.